Beloved child of God, listen closely. Right now, in this very moment, someone has already made a decision about you. Not a casual preference, not a passing curiosity, a choice, a settled, internal decision that didn't happen loudly, didn't happen publicly, and didn't need approval from anyone else. It happened in the heart. And that matters because Scripture teaches us that the heart is where real decisions are made. Not the mouth, not behavior alone. The heart. What's chosen there eventually seeks expression, but only when it feels safe to come forward. This video is for those of you who feel the tension. You sense something real, but it hasn't fully arrived yet. You feel connection, but also delay. Interest, but also restraint. Depth, but also silence. And you're wondering, if this is real, why haven't they stepped forward? Here's the truth most people never tell you. Sometimes the choice is already made, but the reveal is waiting on alignment. Not manipulation, not games, not confusion. Alignment. You're not crazy for sensing this. You're not imagining the pull, the awareness, the quiet emotional gravity that keeps drawing this person back to you again and again. They've already crossed the internal line, but they're waiting for something before they bring that choice into the open. And today, I'm going to tell you exactly what that is. This channel exists to speak clearly where confusion has lived too long, to bring truth where emotion has been swirling without direction, to help you grow, not just in relationships, but in discernment, self-respect, and emotional maturity. If this kind of content helps you breathe again, think clearly again, and feel grounded in who you are, subscribe now. Not for algorithms, for alignment, because I release long-form teachings like this regularly, and you don't want to miss the ones that meet you exactly where you are. Stay with me to the end of this video, because what I'll share there will help you respond wisely, not emotionally, to what's unfolding in front of you. Now let's get grounded in truth. Number 1. They're waiting because they've already counted the cost. One of the biggest misunderstandings in modern relationships is this idea that hesitation equals uncertainty. That's not always true. In fact, Scripture shows us something very different. When something is valuable, wisdom slows down, not because it doubts, but because it understands weight. This person isn't hesitating because they don't know how they feel. They're waiting because they do know, and they've realized what choosing you actually means. They've already run the internal calculations. They've thought about what this would ask of them emotionally, what this would require them to let go of, what kind of consistency they'd need to bring, what kind of integrity they'd have to live at if they stepped into this fully. You don't do that kind of accounting for something temporary. They've recognized that choosing you isn't just adding something to their life, it's reordering it. And that's why they're careful. Scripture teaches that wisdom considers the foundation before building. This person has been measuring themselves against what they sense you deserve. Not asking, do I want them? But asking, can I show up the way this requires? That's a very different question. They've already felt the pull. They've already acknowledged the connection. They've already accepted privately that you matter. But now they're standing at the edge of responsibility. Because choosing you doesn't just mean affection. It means presence, consistency, truth, protection, growth. And they don't want to step forward halfway. This is especially true if this person has depth, faith, or emotional intelligence. People like that don't rush into what they intend to honor. They're not stalling. They're steadying themselves. And here's where you come in. They're watching not to judge you, but to discern whether the space between you is safe enough to carry what they're ready to bring. They're asking silently, will this be received with maturity? Will this be handled with care? Will this connection be honored, not rushed or trivialized? That's why small things matter so much right now. How you respond when conversations go deeper. How you handle emotional honesty, yours and theirs. Whether you rush ahead of reality or can sit calmly inside it. They're not waiting for perfection from you. They're waiting for emotional stability. Someone who doesn't panic at depth. Someone who doesn't need constant reassurance. Someone who can hold connection without gripping it. Scripture reminds us that peace is a confirmation, not pressure. And they're paying attention to whether being around you brings clarity or chaos. Here's what I want you to hear clearly. You don't need to chase. You don't need to perform. You don't need to prove worth. They've already chosen you in their heart. What they're waiting for now is to see whether the environment between you supports what they've already decided to give. And that's not about doing more. It's about being grounded. In the next section, I'm going to explain how your emotional posture, not your words, has more influence right now than you realize. Number 2, they're waiting to see if you're emotionally present, not just emotionally interested. There's a difference between being interested in someone and being available to them. Interest can be intense, expressive, even passionate. Availability is quieter, steadier. It's revealed over time through consistency, emotional regulation, and how you show up when things aren't exciting or dramatic. This person already knows you're interested on some level. That's not the question. What they're waiting to see is whether you are present. Emotionally present people don't disappear when things get real. They don't pull back when conversations deepen. They don't shift energy when vulnerability enters the room. Scripture speaks often about being steadfast, and that word matters here. Steadfastness isn't about intensity. It's about reliability of spirit. Right now, this person is paying close attention to how you occupy space with them. Not what you say, not how affectionate you are, but how safe it feels to be real around you. They're watching how you respond when something awkward comes up, when there's a misunderstanding, when plans change, when emotions fluctuate. Do you stay grounded, or do you react from anxiety? This matters more than you think, because when someone has already chosen you internally, the next fear isn't rejection, it's instability. They're not asking, will they like me back? They're asking, can this person hold connection without losing themselves or pulling me into emotional turbulence? And here's where many people unknowingly create hesitation. Emotional interest often looks like overthinking responses, reading into tone, needing constant clarity, seeking reassurance through indirect means. Emotional presence looks like calm responsiveness, honest communication without urgency, allowing space without assuming distance, letting connection breathe without controlling it. They're observing whether you can remain open without becoming emotionally reactive. Scripture reminds us that love is patient, not because patience is passive, but because patience reflects trust. Right now, patience is speaking louder than passion. If you rush to define things, if you press for certainty before the moment calls for it, if you try to lock in reassurance too early, it doesn't create safety, it creates pressure. And pressure shuts people down who are trying to do something sincerely. This person doesn't need you to be emotionally distant. They need you to be emotionally regulated. There's a big difference. Regulated people don't withhold affection, but they don't flood the space either. They express warmth without expectation. They show care without agenda. That balance communicates maturity. And maturity is incredibly attractive to someone who is already serious. This person may test this unconsciously. They might go quiet for a short period, not to manipulate you, but to see how you handle absence. They might share something personal and then pause, to see whether you respect the weight of what they shared or rush past it. They might move slowly, to see if you try to speed them up or if you can walk with them at their pace. These aren't games. They're discernment. They're asking, can this person stay present without needing control? Scripture teaches that peace is a fruit, not a performance. And right now, peace is the signal they're looking for. If your presence feels like rest, they will move closer. If it feels like demand, they will slow down even if they care deeply. Here's something important. You don't create emotional presence by doing less or more. You create it by being honest without urgency. You can say things like, I enjoy talking with you. I feel comfortable with you. I like where this is going. And then let those words stand without pushing them forward. Presence doesn't chase outcomes. It stays anchored in truth and lets outcomes form naturally. This person is trying to protect what's forming between you. They don't want to introduce it into a dynamic that feels anxious, rushed, or unstable. They're waiting to see if you can stay. Stay kind when uncertain. Stay open when things aren't defined yet. Stay emotionally available without needing guarantees. And here's the truth most people miss. When you demonstrate emotional presence, you remove the final barrier between someone's private decision and their public action. Because you've shown them that what they bring won't be mishandled. You're not asking them to prove anything. You're not demanding clarity before the foundation is ready. You're simply showing up as yourself, steady, receptive, and grounded. That's what they're waiting for. In the next section, I'm going to explain why how you honor yourself right now is directly influencing how and when they step forward, and why self-respect is the strongest invitation you can offer. Number 3, they're watching how you honor yourself, because that determines how they can show up for you. One of the quiet truths Scripture teaches is that people learn how to treat us by watching how we treat ourselves. This person isn't just paying attention to how you engage with them. They're paying attention to how you relate to yourself, because self-honor sets the ceiling for connection. They've already chosen you emotionally, but now they're discerning whether stepping forward will place them in a dynamic where they have to carry more than their share. Emotionally, spiritually, or relationally. They're asking a very important question, even if they don't realize it consciously. Will this relationship be built on mutual strength, or will I have to overcompensate? And the answer to that question depends largely on how you hold yourself. Scripture consistently ties love with soundness of mind. Not self-sacrifice without boundaries. Not overgiving to secure attachment, but wholeness. Right now, they're observing whether you show up from fullness or from lack. Do you speak your needs clearly, or hint and hope? Do you respect your own time and energy, or bend yourself around others to be liked? Do you maintain your values, or adjust them to keep connection? These things matter more than chemistry, because when someone sees that you honor yourself, they don't feel pressured to rescue you, manage you, or stabilize the connection alone. They feel free to meet you, and freedom is what allows love to rise, not obligation. Here's where many people unintentionally slow things down. They become overly accommodating. They minimize their needs. They make themselves easy to avoid conflict or risk. But self-erasure doesn't create safety, creates imbalance. And imbalance creates hesitation, even when feelings are strong. This person wants to choose you out of desire, not responsibility. They want to step forward because the connection feels mutual, not because they sense you're waiting, hoping, or shrinking to keep the door open. Scripture shows us again and again that love flows best where there is mutual respect. Respect starts internally. They're watching how you handle disappointment, how you respond when something doesn't go your way, whether you stay anchored in who you are or abandon yourself to maintain connection. If you disappear emotionally when something feels off, they feel unsure. If you over-explain or justify yourself excessively, they feel pressure. If you hold your ground calmly, they feel trust. This doesn't mean being rigid. It means being rooted. Rooted people don't need to be chased. They don't need to convince. They don't need to overperform. They know who they are. And when someone senses that, it allows them to bring their full self forward without fear of destabilizing the dynamic. Another thing they're watching is how you speak about yourself. Not in affirmations, in patterns. Do you speak from confidence or comparison? From self-awareness or self-criticism? From growth or shame? Scripture teaches that words have weight, and they do, especially the ones you use about yourself. If you consistently diminish yourself, they feel conflicted about elevating the connection. Not because they agree with your self-view, but because they don't want to enter a dynamic where they're constantly correcting or reassuring. They want partnership, not emotional labor imbalance. This person sees your value clearly. They've already chosen you because of who you are. What they're waiting to see is whether you agree. Because when you don't honor yourself, it creates friction with the choice they've already made. They're not waiting for perfection. They're waiting for alignment. Alignment between how they see you and how you carry yourself. There's also something deeper happening here. When you honor yourself, you signal that you're not choosing them out of fear of being alone. You're choosing them out of desire. That distinction is everything. Scripture never frames love as desperation. It frames it as a deliberate, grounded offering. Right now, your energy communicates whether you're open or whether you're waiting to be filled. And this person is sensitive to that. They want to be chosen back, not leaned on, not clung to, chosen. Here's the shift that changes everything. When you live your life fully, engaged, purposeful, emotionally honest, you remove pressure from the connection. You're not waiting on them to define your worth. You're not pausing your life for clarity. You're not shrinking to stay close. You're standing in yourself. And when you do that, something powerful happens. The waiting ends, because self-honor tells them, what I bring will be met, not absorbed. It tells them, this connection can be strong without being heavy. It tells them, I can step forward without losing myself or them. That's what unlocks movement. In the next section, I'm going to explain why timing matters more than urgency, and how divine alignment, not pressure, is what brings this choice into the open. Stay with me. Number 4. They're waiting on timing because rushing what's sacred can ruin what's real. One of the hardest truths to accept, especially when emotions are involved, is that timing is not controlled by desire alone. Scripture makes this clear again and again. There is a season for things to be revealed, and a season for things to be formed. This person isn't delaying because they lack courage. They're waiting because they sense that timing determines whether something grows or collapses under its own weight. They feel the depth of this connection. They know what they want, but they also understand that premature exposure can damage something that hasn't yet stabilized. And this is where many people confuse faith with force. Force says, if it's real, it should happen now. Faith says, if it's real, it will hold when the time is right. This person is operating from faith. They're aware of external factors, emotional, practical, spiritual, that need to align for this to unfold in a way that's healthy. That might include unresolved issues from the past, current responsibilities that demand attention, personal growth that isn't finished yet, life transitions that would strain something new. They're not ignoring their feelings. They're protecting the future version of this connection. Scripture never glorifies rushing. It honors obedience, wisdom, and discernment. Right now, they're discerning. They're asking, if I step forward today, will this be supported or strained? Will this be nurtured or tested beyond its capacity? And they're waiting until the answer feels stable. Here's what's important for you to understand. Timing is not rejection. Timing is preparation. This person is aligning their inner world with the outer reality they want to create with you. They don't want to bring emotional truth into a season that can't sustain it. And they're watching how you relate to time. Do you pressure moments to arrive sooner than they're ready? Do you become anxious when things aren't defined quickly? Do you interpret waiting as lack? Or can you stay grounded while things form? Scripture teaches that peace confirms timing. If someone rushes forward while ignoring peace, they create movement but not stability. This person wants both. They don't want to build something with you that starts in urgency and burns out in confusion. They want to build something that grows quietly strong. That's why they're attentive to whether you can tolerate uncertainty without becoming emotionally reactive. Because uncertainty is part of formation. Right now, the connection is still finding its shape. And shape requires space. If you squeeze something too tightly while it's forming, you deform it. This person understands that instinctively. They're waiting for the moment when stepping forward feels like alignment. Not pressure, not fear, not reaction. They're also aware that timing protects you. If they stepped forward before you were ready, emotionally, spiritually, or internally, it could overwhelm you. They don't want to burden you with depth before you've fully oriented yourself within it. That's care. Scripture teaches that love seeks the good of the other, not just the fulfillment of the self. This waiting isn't selfish. It's considerate. They want to meet you when you're grounded, not when you're still sorting yourself out. That's why your relationship with time right now matters so much. If you rush ahead mentally, if you fixate on outcomes, if you demand clarity before clarity is ready, you create resistance. Not because they don't want you, but because the moment hasn't ripened yet. Here's the paradox. The more you trust the process, the faster it moves. When you stop trying to control timing, you align with it. When you release urgency, you create space for intention. Scripture reminds us that those who wait aren't inactive. They're strengthened. Waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right things without forcing the wrong ones. Live your life fully. Stay emotionally honest. Remain open without gripping. That posture signals maturity, and maturity accelerates timing. This person is waiting for a moment where moving forward feels like expansion, not risk management. They want to step into this with clarity, not cleanup. And when that moment arrives, there won't be hesitation. There will be decisiveness, because the waiting wasn't about doubt. It was about honoring the season. In the next section, I'm going to reveal how your silence and restraint at certain moments may be doing more to invite their choice forward than anything you could say. Stay with me. Number 5. They're paying attention to your restraint because it reveals your emotional maturity. One of the most misunderstood strengths in relationships is restraint. In a culture that rewards overexpression, constant clarification, and emotional immediacy, restraint can look like indifference or passivity. But Scripture teaches something very different. Restraint is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of wisdom. This person knows you feel something. They know there's connection. They know the energy between you is real. What they're watching now is whether you can hold that feeling without letting it spill into pressure, demands, or emotional overreach. Because how someone manages intensity tells you everything about how they'll manage commitment. Restraint signals self-trust. It says, I don't need to rush this to feel secure. I don't need constant confirmation to stay open. I can allow something to unfold without forcing it. That's powerful. Scripture often pairs strength with self-control for a reason. Anyone can express emotion. Few people can steward it. Right now, they're discerning whether you're someone who can steward what they're about to bring. They're watching moments where you could say more, but don't. Moments where you could push but choose patience. Moments where you could react but stay composed. Those moments are speaking louder than words. If you flood the space with emotion, it creates imbalance. If you withdraw completely, it creates confusion. But restraint creates safety. It tells them, this person isn't driven by fear. This person doesn't need to control the pace. This person can handle depth without losing equilibrium. That's rare. And rare qualities invite serious action. Restraint also reveals whether your interest is rooted in desire or insecurity. Insecurity needs reassurance now. Desire is willing to wait for alignment. This person has already chosen you emotionally, but they don't want to step into a dynamic where reassurance becomes the foundation. They want connection to grow from mutual readiness, not emotional management. Scripture teaches that love is confident, not frantic. So they're watching how you handle moments of silence. Do you assume the worst? Do you fill gaps with anxiety? Do you interpret space as distance? Or can you remain steady without immediate feedback? Silence, when held well, builds trust. It shows you don't panic when things aren't being actively affirmed. And someone who has already chosen you needs to know that you won't unravel during the quiet phases. Because every long-term connection has them. Another place restraint shows up is in how you speak about the future. Do you rush ahead verbally, making plans, projections, assumptions before the present is settled? Or do you stay grounded in what's real now? This person wants to step forward with clarity, not have expectations placed on them before they've spoken. They don't want to feel rushed into a role they haven't formally claimed. Restraint gives them space to choose freely, and freedom makes choice sincere. Scripture consistently shows that willing offerings carry more power than compelled ones. Right now, your restraint is protecting the sincerity of what's forming. It's also revealing your emotional independence. When you don't push for constant engagement, you show that your life is full. When you don't overreact to changes in rhythm, you show resilience. When you don't over-explain yourself, you show self-trust. These things lower resistance. They tell this person that choosing you won't come with emotional chaos or loss of autonomy. They can step forward without bracing themselves. Restraint also communicates respect. Respect for their process. Respect for timing. Respect for the weight of what's forming. And respect is deeply attractive to someone who takes connection seriously. Here's something subtle but important. Restraint creates polarity. It allows desire to build naturally instead of being expended prematurely. When you don't say everything you feel all at once, You leave room for curiosity. When you don't demand clarity, you invite initiative. This person is feeling that pull. They're feeling the space you're holding, and they're deciding whether to step into it. Scripture reminds us that wisdom is known by its fruit. Right now, restraint is producing fruit. Calm, respect, anticipation, trust. Those are the conditions where confession happens, where truth comes forward without fear, where someone who has already chosen you finally says it out loud. In the next section, I'm going to explain why they're especially sensitive to how you handle vulnerability, and how your response to their softer moments determines how fully they reveal their heart. Stay with me. Number 6. They're watching how you respond to vulnerability, because that determines how fully they'll reveal their heart. One of the most defining moments in any meaningful relationship is the exposure of the inner self. And right now, that's exactly what's happening. This person has already chosen you in their heart, but the depth of what they carry isn't fully visible yet. They're holding pieces of themselves that are tender, private, and powerful. These are fragments of their history, emotion, and dreams that are rarely shared. They have not shared them with the world, with casual friends, or even family sometimes. And the reason they hold these close is simple. They are precious. Scripture reminds us that the heart is where our treasures lie. When someone entrusts those treasures, they are testing the space they've chosen to place them in. They are asking, is this a safe vessel? You may have noticed moments when they've opened slightly, small admissions, quiet honesty, vulnerable confessions. Maybe it was a memory they rarely speak of, a fear they've carried, or an emotion they usually guard. Maybe it was a side of them that doesn't always fit the image they show the world. And how you respond to those moments, that determines everything. If your response is judgment, dismissal, or discomfort, even subtly, they will retreat. And not because they don't trust you, they will because they know the weight of exposure. Vulnerability cannot survive in a space where it feels unsafe. On the other hand, if your response is steady, grounded, and honoring, something remarkable happens. They feel seen, respected, and recognized. They feel that their private world can coexist with yours without being distorted or used against them. This is the key to unlocking the bridge between their heart and yours. It is not about perfection. They do not expect flawless reactions. They do not need you to say the right words every time. What they need is authenticity, presence, acceptance. Even a simple acknowledgement like, I hear you, I see you, that matters to me, creates safety in ways words cannot fully articulate. When you respond well to vulnerability, they receive a silent message. I can be all of who I am, and it will be welcomed. They are no longer protecting themselves against potential misunderstanding, judgment, or rejection. And protection has been the reason for their pause all along. They've chosen you, yes, but revealing all that choice means removing shields. And shields can only come down when safety is clear. Another layer to consider is reciprocity. They are watching to see if your own vulnerability is present and consistent. Are you willing to show the cracks in your armor? Are you willing to communicate discomfort, fear, or uncertainty without shame or defensiveness? Or do you hide, perform, or mask your authentic experience? Scripture repeatedly emphasizes honesty and confession as pathways to relational depth. They are aware that vulnerability is sacred, and they are scanning the relational environment for evidence that it can be shared, received, and held without distortion. Your willingness to be real, the small moments of truth-telling, of emotional honesty, of letting them see you in your imperfect human form, is the invitation they are waiting for. This does not mean oversharing or emotional dumping. That can have the opposite effect. It can overwhelm the space they've been carefully curating. But measured, authentic openness communicates trust, strength, and emotional maturity. It tells them, without words, that what they feel safe showing is not just protected, it is honored. When they share and you respond well, the energy between you shifts. Their hesitation softens. Their walls lower. Their heart, which has already chosen you, begins to align with outward action. They start moving from private acknowledgement to public and intentional expression. Consider the moments when they may retreat slightly. This is not rejection, it is discernment. They are testing whether the emotional terrain you provide is secure enough for deeper truth. How you respond in these moments is crucial. If you react with anxiety, they will pause again. If you react with patience and calm, they will lean in. This principle applies in every interaction, whether a conversation, a text exchange, or a quiet observation of how you behave around them. Every instance of respect, acknowledgement, and emotional steadiness builds the silent confidence that allows them to reveal the fullness of their heart. Here's the subtle spiritual dimension. Vulnerability is inherently sacred. Scripture consistently shows that the human heart is a temple of divine intention. When someone allows you into that sacred space, they are offering trust that transcends casual affection. Your response is either a reflection of respect for that sacredness or a disregard for it. The difference determines whether their chosen love remains hidden or flows openly toward you. In practical terms, this means every small interaction counts. If they confide a worry, respond with patience. If they share a memory that hints at past pain, respond with compassion. If they reveal a dream or desire, respond with encouragement, not judgment. These are all opportunities to signal that the connection can sustain depth. The core truth here is this. They have already chosen you in heart, but their soul is waiting to see if the environment you create will honor that choice. If you show up consistently as someone who can witness, respect, and reciprocate vulnerability, you remove the final obstacle. You create space for all that has been carefully guarded to flow freely. When this happens, they no longer have to calculate, pause, or protect. They can move with clarity, courage, and commitment, because they now know their heart is safe in your hands. In the next section, I'll show you why how you handle your own freedom and independence becomes the final signal that prompts them to step fully forward, and how your life outside the connection is just as vital to their choice as the connection itself. Stay with me. Number 7. They're waiting to see if you choose your life fully, because love joins strength, not emptiness. This final piece is the one most people overlook, and yet it's often the deciding factor. This person isn't just watching how you relate to them. They're watching how you relate to your life. Because real love doesn't want to be your escape. It wants to be your companion. Scripture never presents love as a replacement for purpose. It presents it as something that walks alongside calling, identity, and growth. This person has already chosen you emotionally, but before they step forward completely, they need to see one thing clearly. That you are choosing your own life with intention, joy, and responsibility. Not waiting for them to arrive before you feel whole. Not pausing your forward movement for clarity. Not shrinking your world to make room for connection. They're waiting to see whether you are alive in your own life. This matters because no one wants to feel like the center of someone else's existence. That's pressure, not intimacy. They want to be important to you, but not your only source of meaning. Scripture teaches that fullness attracts fullness. When someone sees you engaged with your work, your growth, your friendships, your healing, your faith, your purpose, it communicates stability. It tells them, this person isn't looking to be completed. They're choosing to share. That removes fear. Fear of becoming responsible for your happiness. Fear of being needed more than wanted. Fear of being the emotional anchor for someone who hasn't anchored themselves. They don't want to rescue you into a life. They want to join you in one you're already living. That's why how you carry yourself when they're not around matters just as much as how you engage when they are. Are you present in your days? Are you investing in your growth? Are you honoring your responsibilities and passions? Or are you subconsciously waiting for the relationship to begin before you feel alive again? This person can feel that difference. Scripture shows us that people who wait well are not idle. They're active in obedience, growth, and preparation. Right now, your life is speaking on your behalf. When you continue moving forward, learning, healing, building, you communicate that connection with you will be additive, not consuming. And that is deeply reassuring. Another layer to this is independence. They're watching whether you can stand on your own emotionally. Do you make decisions confidently? Do you trust yourself? Do you navigate challenges without collapsing? This doesn't mean you never need support. It means you're not dependent on someone else to regulate your inner world. Scripture honors mutual support, not emotional dependency. When they see that you are grounded, they feel safe stepping closer. because they know that even if things get hard, you won't disappear into fear or expectation. There's also something spiritually significant here. Choosing your life fully demonstrates trust. Trust in timing, trust in growth, trust in what's unfolding. It says, I don't need to grasp, I can receive. And that posture is magnetic. This person wants to move toward you freely, not out of obligation or guilt. They want to feel that choosing you is a celebration, not a responsibility. And when you live fully, without waiting, without withholding, you create that environment. Here's the shift that ends the waiting. When they see that you are not holding your life hostage for their decision, something relaxes inside them. The pressure lifts. The fear dissolves. Because they realize that stepping forward doesn't trap them, it joins them to something alive. That's when choice becomes action. That's when what's been held privately is spoken openly. That's when they stop waiting. Let me speak directly to you now. You were never meant to pause your becoming for someone else's readiness. You were meant to grow so that when love arrives, it meets you standing, not waiting. Scripture reminds us that strength and gentleness are not opposites. They walk together. Right now, choosing your life fully is the gentlest invitation you can offer. Not a demand, not a push, not a plea, an invitation. And when you live that way, the person who has already chosen you will recognize that the time has come. Because love doesn't need to be forced into a life that's already open. It simply steps in. Take a breath right here. Not because everything is suddenly resolved, but because clarity has replaced confusion. And clarity always brings peace before it brings movement. If there's one thing I want you to walk away with, it's this. You were never waiting because you weren't enough. You were waiting because something meaningful was being handled with care. This person didn't pause because they were unsure. They paused because what they feel carries weight. And now you understand the deeper truth. You are not being asked to chase, prove, convince, or perform. You are being invited to stand fully in who you are, without fear, without shrinking, without rushing what's sacred. That's not passive. That's powerful. Scripture reminds us that when the heart is aligned, the path becomes clear. And alignment doesn't come from pressure, it comes from truth, from self-respect, from emotional maturity, from choosing your life while remaining open to love. If you've been wondering what to do next, here it is in its simplest form. Live honestly, respond steadily, stay grounded, and trust that what's meant to move forward will not miss its moment. You don't need to manipulate timing. You don't need to decode every silence. You don't need to abandon yourself to keep connection. What has already been chosen will find its voice. And if this person steps forward, it will be because the environment between you became safe, mature, and aligned, not because you forced it into being. And if, for any reason, they don't hear this clearly, the posture you've been learning here doesn't lead to loss. It leads to alignment, because the kind of love that meets you when you're grounded is the kind of love that stays. If this message spoke directly to your situation, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Not casually, intentionally. This space exists for long-form teachings that help you grow in clarity, discernment, and emotional strength. And there are more messages coming that will meet you exactly where you are in this season. If you feel led, leave a comment below with the word aligned. Not for me, but for you. Let it be a marker of the posture you're choosing from this point forward. And if this video helped steady your heart, share it with someone who needs clarity instead of noise. We don't heal alone, we heal in truth. Remember this, you don't attract love by waiting. You attract it by becoming. Stay rooted, stay open, and trust what's unfolding.